Hi, welcome outside to the barbecue. Today we're going to be doing some hot barbecued Asian pork with a noodle salad. So what I've got here is actually my noodles. So they're just an instant noodle, not the 2-minute variety. These are a bit more of a gourmet instant noodles. So I've just followed the directions of the packet and cooked those off. And I've just got those sitting aside and we're going to use those later on. So we'll pop those back there. So onto our pork. What I've got my butcher to prepare for me is some pork loin and part of the pork belly. So basically they're 2 pieces. So we've still got the actual skin on it, but we've got this nice meaty part of the loin and the nice part of the belly. So what we're going to do is create a marinade to go on our pork, and preferably again marinate overnight or maybe 3 hours as a minimum, but today we'll speed up the process. So our marinating ingredients for this are a wee bit interesting. This one you might think is a bit strange, but you know, it's one of the tricks of the trade of Asian cooking, and you often seen those barbecued pork ribs or those barbecued ducks maybe hanging up in a Chinese shop. They've often used a wee bit of red food colouring. So we're doing the same, just a few drops of food colouring go onto the pork, and that's just going to give it a nice little hue. So what I've got now is going in some hoisin sauce, which is a wonderful Asian sauce. We've got some liquid honey. So it's going to add some sweetness, and it's also going to caramelise as we cook. Then goes our soya sauce. We've got some soft brown sugar, and again that's going to help with the caramelisation and the sweetness. In goes some sweet sherry. If you didn't have sherry, don't go and buy some. I mean, you've got a bit of brandy, you know, even probably a bit of gin, just a wee bit of alcohol will just add that flavour to it. And then the last thing I've got here is some star anise, and I've used star anise before. I think the camera will pick those up. They're these wonderful little stars with these little pods. So they're actually going to add that wonderful aniseed flavour to our dish. So we just want to crush those down. You know, if you've got a mortar and pestle, you might want to put it in. You know, they are quite tough, so don't just watch your knife. So I often give them a good whack just to break them down. And because this is our marinade, it's actually not going to end up in a sauce or anything, so you're not going to end up with these crunchy bits, but they're going to add that wonderful aniseed flavour. So what we want to do now is basically mix and coat our pork in those ingredients. So as I said, if you were doing this overnight, or at least for 3 hours, cover it, keep it in the fridge. We'll just get them nicely coated. And then as this cooks, you want to use some of the leftover marinade to actually baste the pork to keep it nice and moist, because pork can dry out. So we'll put some of our oil on the barbecue. I'm going to start that skin side down first. So on that goes. Just a wee bit more of that on top. And we'll just keep that cooking away quite happily. I'm also just going to sprinkle on, as it's cooking, some spring onions and some ginger and garlic, and that's also going to impart a nice flavour into it, so it's going to bring through those Asian flavours. Now you can stick that in the marinade as well, or you can stick it on like this, so we're actually going to get some of that flavour with the direct heat coming into contact with the pork once we turn that over. Right, so on to our noodle salad. Going to use some red onion. As you can see, I've been using a bit of red onion in the barbecue series, but again it just adds some wonderful colour to the dish, or to the dishes we've been making, and it's one of those things that's quite nice to eat raw as well. So again, nice thin slices. And we'll bring back our bowl. So that's got our noodles that I've already pre-cooked in there. So breaking in those nice slithers of red onion. We've got some spring onions. So we want to chop our spring onions. I'll break these into a couple of smaller bunches. Now I've just washed these, topped and tailed them, and just cutting them on an angle. Of course, we eat with our eyes, so we're seeing the different colours and the different shapes. If we cut them all the same way, it doesn't look as appetising. in goes our spring onions, and then we want to add some capsicum, some red pepper. About half a red pepper will probably do. Just make sure you remove the white vein. It just doesn't look as nice in the finished dish. Nice and thin. When you're chopping, just remember that rocking action. Of course, remember to keep your fingers out of the way. You can, if you had smell-o-vision, I can smell that pork, I can smell the aniseed flavour coming out. So let's go back to our pork and we'll give it a bit of a turn over. So see that nice caramelisation that's happening on the pork? That's what we want. Put a bit more of our marinade on top. So this is something that's going to take a slow, long cooking. I haven't got my heat up too high. And if you've got one of the barbecues that's got one of the lids, you can actually even do a bigger piece of pork and bring the lid down and roast it within the barbecue as well. And that would actually be really great too. So now just going to toss my noodles with those fresh vegetables I've added in there. You know, so there's nothing wrong with using convenience products like these instant noodles. You know, we've added value to them from a nutritional point of view with all those fresh vegetables that we've put in. Now I'm just going to dress that with a wee bit of lime juice, keeping our Asian flavours coming through, and a wee bit of sesame oil. Not too much sesame oil because it's quite strong. So you can see that's nice and colourful. You know, you could add some some yellow peppers to it if you wanted to, some green peppers. If you grow courgettes in your garden, you could add some courgettes and they'd be fine just going in raw. Some little scallopini would be great in there as well. Right, so we'll grab our platter. So I'm just going to literally dump those noodles out onto the platter, ready for service. We'll just pop that out of the way. Bit of a rejig. So here's some of the pork that I'd actually cooked off earlier on. You can see it's nice and charred, but that's actually where that flavour is as well. It's actually not burnt, but that's where that caramelisation has happened. So now we can actually cut our pork into nice slithers. So it's got that whole barbecue flavour that's gone on. Now you can slightly undercook your pork these days, but you're still got to be careful with your pork. You want to make sure it is reasonably well cooked, but we still want to keep it nice and moist as well. So then it's just a matter of popping that pork in on top. So of course here you've got a wonderful all-in-one barbecue dish. You've got your wonderful barbecued pork, and then you got your little noodle salad underneath it. So I mean, that's a really easy one. Marinate your pork overnight, get it on the barbecue early, get it roasted off,